So I want to do take a little break from painting this room to talk about the Zeitgeist. I'm just really interested in them. I find them interesting. What is the Zeitgeist? Are you making stories for the Zeitgeist? I don't know totally everything about it, but I think I have a strong understanding enough to explain what I think it is. The more I understand, the more I'll share. So there's 4 turnings, and let me just look up where this turning. I think it came from a play. Okay, so the term Zeitgeist is a German word that means spirit of the age, and its creator was a German poet and philosopher, Johann Gottfried Herder. Okay, so basically you have 4 turnings in a Zeitgeist, in the turn, right? Okay, so the first turning is you are creating new worlds. So let me see if I can find this like little turning Zeitgeist infograph. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. This is what I'm going to refer to. This is from Thomas Umstattd's Novel Marketing. He didn't make this graphic, but I think somebody that was following him made it, and he talks extensively about it. So if you want to learn more, I would check out his podcast. So we'll start with the first turning. The first turning is you are creating a good world, right? So you have strong men, and this is, I'm going to refer to more of this in fantasy because I'm writing a fantasy. Strong men create good times. So you have Chronicles of Narnia. They're exploring, they're creating, they're making a good world. A Wrinkle in Time. They're exploring and they're seeing new worlds and they're creating, and that's what the first turning is. Let me see if I can find what example. I asked. So Thomas Umstattd has this thing called AI Thomas, where you can ask him questions. And I asked him like anime examples of the 4th turning and stuff. And what is it? Let me see. Okay, I found where I asked him. So the first turning would be considered spring, rejuvenation, and order. So era follows a crisis with renewed civic life, strong institutions, and a sense of collective purpose. Time of rebuilding and establishing a new, often idealized order. Stories might focus on the establishment of a peaceful society, the rise of a new hero unites people, and simple joys of a stable world. So some examples of that I've seen are Studio Ghibli, Kiki's Delivery Service, or My Neighbor Totoro. So, you know, they show that challenges exist, but there's the overarching tone of wonder, community, and finding joy in simple living. Portray a gentle, harmonious existence with a touch of magic, good feelings, and beauty of the first turning. Okay, so that's the first turning. Now we get into the second turning, because the thing about the turnings is if you go too far in one direction, there's like a bad outcome that can happen with the turning, and it has to correct itself, right? So if I go too far with the first turning, if everything's going too well and I'm like going out and I'm spreading these, you know, new worlds or whatever, there's the risk that I could become like a tyrant, or that I could be maybe pushing these ideas on people that don't want them, or maybe I could be, maybe I could push over individuals for this collective good or whatever. Like, so you have these problems that happen if I go too far into the first turning, if that makes sense. So when the first turning starts getting like corrupted per se, now we're going to go into the second turning. So that's the awakening, summer. This is questioning and individualism. And I feel like this turning is what most literary authors want to write right now. And most of the books, you're like, wow, that was such a good introspective novel. are going to be in the second turning. So A Clockwork Orange is the second turning. Fight Club is the second turning. All these things where we're kind of questioning and challenging norms and institutions. We have a rise of individualism, moral, spiritual questioning. They might push against the conformity and so on. And it's kind of like everything's going well on the outside, right? Another example I thought of was American Psycho, right? So everything is going great on the outside, right? We're really successful in business or whatever it might be, you know. But on the inside, we're crumbling, and we have this sort of, we don't have good morals anymore, like that sort of thing. The thing that Thomas put out, so the second turning is good times create weak men. So the first turning, it's called noble bright. So people are good and the creation of the worlds are good. Now it's gone too far. You know, it's become corrupted somehow. So now we're going to the second turning, where now you've had good times for too long, and now we're creating weak men. Because if you, I mean, you probably see this in your everyday life. If you have someone that everybody thinks has been given to them and their whole life's been great, they probably, I don't want to say everybody, but most likely they could be a jerk. They don't understand people, whatever it might be. So now we see that, and we see that questioning. Now we've created morally corrupt people. And now we have to deal with that. So now we're going into grim bright. So an example of this is, they were talking about it on the podcast, Mary Poppins. And all of these Zeitgeist things, they can be good. We can enjoy them no matter what the time period, if they're done well and they're a classic. I mean, you can do all of these really well. Like A Clockwork Orange, I could read it now. But do I necessarily want to read it now, you know? Right now, times are hard, and we felt really cynical. We're coming out of like a grim dark. We're coming out of the third turning, where it feels like everybody wants, you know, I think that whatever time you're living in, then you want to go through the turning. So that's the literature you want. So for example, like I think we're living in grim dark, like we're living in cynical times. It feels like people are just out for their own. And it feels like people are morally ambiguous, like they don't care or whatever, right? So we want stories that are noble dark. So they go through the fourth turning, and that we're like, oh, we want stories that are showing us hope. Like we feel this evil and we want it to be destroyed, right? Okay, I don't know if that makes sense. So back to the second turning. So I feel that a lot of writers want to write in the second turning because it's kind of the cool turning. A lot of the cool novels, so to speak, are written as a second turning. That now we're very introspective. We're thinking about what's right, what's wrong, what do we owe, like, you know what I mean? So it's a very introspective type of turning. And I think people, to that feels smart. I'm not exactly sure why, but it feels really intelligent to be looking inside, and also it subverts a lot of expectations. Like say you have a hero and you're like, well, they actually, you know, this is why they were, now we're subverting expectations, and we're kind of like, you know what I mean? So I think it's interesting, and people think it's really intelligent. I'm not saying it's not, but for some reason there feels to be this amongst literary novels, even coming out today, and I feel like there's a lot of novels that are coming out that they're kind of missing the mark on what readers want right now, because they want to write and they want to do this introspection, which in hard times, we don't really want to introspect. We don't have time for it, and we feel exhausted from the world, and we want like an escapism kind of thing. We don't really have the what's the word? The ability, or kind of, what's the word for the luxury? We don't have the luxury of thinking about this, because we're just bombarded by really hard external circumstances, and it feels like we're really struggling internally too, to the point where we just don't want to think about it. So these books are not going to be as popular in a time like now. But I feel like a lot of people that want to be writers, and I use quotation marks because I feel like, do you just want to be a writer, or do you want to actually entertain readers? And because I notice this a lot, that a lot of writers in their vlogs will be talking about my story, my this, my that, and they kind of are forgetting that you're writing this for an audience and you're writing this for a purpose, and that purpose is outside of your story. Not saying that you shouldn't write your story, but ask yourself, what is the point of writing? Like, why are you writing? Is it to entertain, or is it to be a cool writer? I don't even know what that means, but that's just the vibe I get from the second turners that want to write second turn. Now, there's a time and place for a second turn, and I really love a lot of second turn novels, and they're really cool. I want to say that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is also a second turn. Let me ask AI Thomas. What turn is Fear and in Las Vegas? I want to say it's a second turn. I'm going to guess it's a second turn because it's questioning ourselves. Let's see. Oh, it's the third turning. Okay, probably because the people don't have like a moral ambiguity. Anyway, so, oh, because it's not, yeah, okay, so it would be a third turning because kind of everything sucks. Okay, so wait, back to all right. So the second turning is everything seems bright and shiny on the outside, everything's going wonderful, but now we need to ask ourselves and turn into ourselves, what are we doing with that? Now, they were talking about this on this podcast, that Mary Poppins was a second turning as well, was a grim, bright story, because basically it's during the Gilded Age, everything's going great on the outside, but Mr. Higgins wants to just keep going with his conquering, so to speak, right? He wants to keep going in the bank, he wants the son to follow his footsteps in the bank, but now it's like, okay, you have good times, you should now learn to enjoy the good times instead of keep going and keep going more. Now you're going to become a tyrant, you see? So it's kind of that theme. Okay, so if we keep going with that though, if we keep going around the turns, right? So now we have weak men because we created weak men because the times are too good, right? And now we have weak men, and now the weak men are creating hard times because the weak men don't really understand what it is to have a hard time, and now we've created hard times, and now we're morally bankrupt and we're in a bad environment. So that's peak grimdark, and that's like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, it's a morally bankrupt world. I mean, everyone's out for their own good. There's really no good characters. It's a morally bankrupt world, and no one wins. Okay, that's grim dark. The main characters don't have necessarily a moral compass. They're kind of out for their own good. They aren't necessarily doing, like, I feel like another example of it would be, what's that Tony Soprano thing, The Sopranos. They're all out for their own good. It's a crappy world, like everyone's crappy, and that's how the world feels right now. I mean, at least for me. I don't know about anybody else. It feels like we're living in a grim, dark world. And when you present stories to people who feel like they're living in a grimdark world that are like noble, bright, or like, hey, you should question yourself and how you're living, it's almost laughable to the people living in the grimdark. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost, you scoff at it, like, oh, okay. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's a problem that some of the authors are having. Like, you can't, so then you would have problems selling it, because to tell someone, oh, like the world is all horrible or the world is great, like you know what I mean? It's really, it almost feels gaslighty. And I think deep down people are reading this and it makes them angry inside because they don't feel recognized and they feel gaslit. I mean, at least that's how I feel sometimes when I read some of these literary books that are coming out right now, because it feels like, well, I've been living in this grimdark world and then you're telling me, oh, it sucks. Oh, you should be looking inside, and I don't know. It feels gaslighty. Also, we don't really want necessarily, noble, bright right now, but you would be skating towards the puck at least. The worst thing to do would be to go to grim bright, where you write a story where you're like, everything's great and wonderful. Look inside yourself, or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense. I think people who are living in grimdark can appreciate grimdark stories for a turn because they feel seen, but then there comes a point where you want to go into noble dark, where you want to go to the other side and be successful and have hope. We want hope. And you'll notice there's a lot of things coming out right now. They don't, like, I want to say that begonia thing is grimdark. Or actually, I don't know, it might even be grim bright. I don't know, that really weird new, what is that new movie? Begonia? This is a movie. Yeah, Begonia. Let's see what A.I. Thomas says. But another one I was thinking about that I think there's problems with, that people are already having problems with, is the new Wuthering Heights adaptation. Because everybody, it's grim dark. I mean, Wuthering Heights is sort of grim dark when you think about it. Because, think about it. Everyone is mean. They have their motives. I mean, Kathy, and they're terrible people. Everybody's terrible people. They ruin everybody's lives. And at the end, and they're living in a terrible world that's unjust, and and then causes all these problems. And at the end, he's just haunted by Kathy, and that's the end. So to choose, I feel like these people, they want to know, they see that people want romance right now, because I think people want romance because, one, it's escapism, and two, they want that hopeful ending, and they're missing that sort of magic, right? Because we're living in the grimdark. So that's kind of why they want the romance, but they're seeing that people want romance, but then they're interpreting it weird, and they're saying, well, let's do Wuthering Heights, and then make it really weird and like subversive, which really is not a good way to go in the current zeitgeist, and actually it's going backwards. But anyway, so that's it for the Zeitgeist talk. I think I'll do more later, but I think that my story is going through the fourth turning, going from grim dark into grim noble dark. So we have a pretty much good moral heroes. I mean, they're complicated. Okay, you can still make them complicated and have, complicated feelings, but overall their goals are good and for the better of other people and better of the world. And there's this encroaching evil that they're trying to keep at bay. So yeah, I'm gonna do more videos on the Zeitgeist thing. I think it's really interesting, and just I really like analyzing, especially the new movies and things coming out and the new books coming out. Are they in the Zeitgeist? And then what I'm doing is I'm seeing if they are popular or become popular, and things that were popular. We hit a peak in terms of the Zeitgeist thing. For a lot of the things, and now we're totally swinging the other way. So things that were really popular 5 years ago, that it just seemed like, wow, these things are going to keep going and going. It's like exponentially become more popular. Actually, is not, because now we're going the other way. Now we're going through the fourth turning. So those things that were really popular, that it seemed like, so I feel bad for people that, you know, maybe they have a certain writing style that was really popular 5 years ago, but now it's just not. There's not going to be that longevity, because these Zeitgeist things can last for 10, 15, or even 20 years or longer, depending on the genre, the circumstances, and what's going on. So, you know, like people are saying romanticism is a fad. It's not really a fad. It is part of the Zeitgeist, and it's going to have at least 5 to 10 years of longevity to it. It might even be longer. Anyway, hope you have a great day.